welcome back, loves. Welcome to Linda Love Talks with yours truly, Linda Love Lemos. We are here. We are back. It's 2025. I hope you guys are having the best year ever so far. I know we're like a quarter way through it. Today on the show, I have such an amazing person. I love her book. Please go out and get a copy of Nancy Robles The Many Pieces of Me by Nancy Robles. It's such a good book. Our guest for today is so special to me. She was a fellow peer at Berkeley College. She's a graduate of Berkeley College. She is a graduate of the University of Phoenix. She has a master's from the University of Phoenix, and she is currently finishing up her last semester in the University of Phoenix. She is pursuing her doctoral degree. And this guest is just absolutely amazing. She is president of a company. She's president of the Eastern Funding LLC company. She is also a trustee for the Berkeley College Foundation. It's a plethora of titles here. And I'm so excited to have Nancy on here. She will be talking about growing up in Patterson. She will be talking about uh, her inspiration as to why she wrote this book. And of course, she will be talking about how she, although she was going through a lot of things emotionally and personally, she still stuck to her guns and has been able to graduate not just once, not just twice, but 4 times. So we have to give her a round of applause for Nancy Robles. Nancy, so I'm going to get right
Hi.
into it.
Yes. Thank you. By the way, thank you for having me here. I feel so honored. I love your stuff. I follow you, your books, everything about you is amazing. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And it's so wonderful to have Berkeley College alumni. We actually had the same professor. We've had one class, I believe, together. And it's been wonderful to connect after all these years.
Mhm.
And, what I love about Nancy is that she loves to learn. She's still learning. Okay. She could have stopped. She's president now. I don't know where else her ambitions will take her, but it's been wonderful that she has continued to learn. And she's currently finishing up her doctoral program.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
And just to start off the questions, tell me a little bit, tell us about Costa Rica and growing up in Patterson, New Jersey.
Well, I was born in Costa Rica, and I was born in 1973 to date myself. And, life over there was obviously very different from here, right? It was a much slower pace of life. It's just a completely different world. And the world that I knew was a two-parent household. I was the youngest of three, and it was just a slower pace. My
Hmm.
mom was home. So it was I don't remember much about it really
Right.
because I was so young, and I think I I didn't. I don't think you appreciate how traumatic migrating to a different country can be,
Hmm.
right? And I actually didn't appreciate it myself until a therapist told me once.
Hmm.
But there has you have to like disassociate from who you were once and
Hmm.
create a whole new identity,
Hmm.
and that's a really traumatic thing to do at any age, especially when you're a child. Um, so, coming to Patterson when I was 8 years old, right after my parents' divorce, which is also a very traumatic event.
Hmm.
Um, it was a complete culture shock. Not only, the fact that I didn't even speak English, but then just it's a city. It's a
Hmm.
much faster paced environment. It was such a no, so much diversity in cultures and people. Even, you speak Spanish, but there's a bunch of different dialects and
Hmm.
just so many things to learn. It's such a different world.
Hmm.
School was so different. Um, so growing up in Patterson, I carry that like a badge of honor. It's one of those things like it's really tough,
Hmm.
a lot of adversity,
Hmm.
right? A lot of violence, underfunded schools. like I said, right, fitting in, creating a new culture, creating, finding your place in this melting pot.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also where I think I got my resilience from,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this attitude of I'm gonna survive one way or the other. And I learned many, many, many lessons uh, about who I was and what I could be and who I could be. And not in terms of God, I felt like I was invincible,
Mm-hmm.
but just overcoming all that adversity. Going looking back as an adult, I realized, wow, we really there was poverty, like real
Yeah.
poverty, and real like food insecurity
Mm-hmm.
and real like safety issues and harassment and all
Mm-hmm.
these things that you don't appreciate because it becomes part of life. But it does teach you to be a survivor, and it teaches you lessons that a lot of people just will never have, right? Because you could be academically smart, you could go
Mm-hmm.
to Ivy League, you could do all these things in
Right.
life,
Mm-hmm.
but not have this sense of I can read a room. I can, read people's body language. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's things that I tell people that you can only learn in an environment like that. And I think for
Absolutely.
me,
Mm-hmm.
that's really helped me in my career, in my entire life.
Absolutely. And you can learn if something's kind of not quite right as well, I think. And I love that having you here because I think there's so many people who have heard of Patterson, sadly, and that there's is Patterson and people of Patterson are stigmatized. And there is a bias against, people of Patterson, and they have this understanding that Patterson's violent, that there's criminals, that all the negative side of living in a city. However, I appreciate, connecting with you and talking to you and giving hope to a lot of students and a lot of young adults right now that are living in Patterson, to have role models, to have people who are book authors who've been able to go through so much adversity and still come out the other end. And I think that's perilous with the times that we're living in right now, that it doesn't matter how you start it. What matters is how you finish in life.
Absolutely. You know what? It's so funny because you saying that reminds me. There's a high school that I go to in Patterson to speak at annually, and a kid once asked me, "Aren't you embarrassed that
Hmm.
you're from Patterson?" And then I understood what he meant, right? Because you get that like the stigma, right? That's
Yeah.
what he was referring to that you're
Hmm.
talking about. And then I talked to him about the things that I just told you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
get it, but there's all these things that have made me more resilient,
Hmm.
and I believe I have an edge on people. The people that I work with that have lived a very different, very a life where with that they don't really relate to what it's like to have scarcity in your life,
Hmm.
right? And I feel like I, I have that advantage, and that gives me an edge. So yeah, you're so right about that. Even not only do the people judge them, but the people themselves that live there feel that stigma, feel that judgment.
Absolutely. So we're going to get right into this wonderful book. What a great cover, by the way.
Thanks.
And it's called The Many Pieces of Me by Nancy Robles. And what inspired you to write this book?
Well, actually, the book is a result of, well, when I was in therapy, I wrote narratives to work through some of the trauma. And so during COVID, I started spending a lot more time on my recovery and reading a lot of books. And then working with my therapist, we decided to start writing narratives about different events because it was just too much to work through in therapy, right? You meet once
Hmm.
a week for an hour, it's just not enough time.
Hmm.
So I was collecting these narratives that I was writing. It was helping me process
Hmm.
different parts of my trauma because I have what they call cascading trauma, which is trauma on top of trauma, right? It's
Hmm.
not one event, it's many events. And um and then I was being interviewed for a podcast, and it was really about my work, like my day job
Hmm.
and in finance. And I'm telling this person about my life because they're asking me questions, obviously. And then when we finished, said, wow, you should really write a book. So I was like, oh, I don't know about writing a book, but I have these things.
Right.
And it just so happened that his wife is a publisher. And he said, why?
That's
Maybe,
wow. That's
yes,
being at the right place. Yeah.
yes, that's like the universal lining.
Yeah, yeah.
And he said, she likes writing disruptive books. She likes publishing disruptive books. So she might be interested in yours. I don't know. I mean, it's worth a try. So I was hesitant, but I was like, oh, what the hell? And I did. I sent her the first, what are now the first few chapters. And then I didn't hear from them for a long time. So I was like, oh, I didn't like it, whatever. It's,
Hmm.
I have all these other things going on. And then one day I was speaking at a conference and he was there because he's from my industry. And she was there, but I didn't think much of it. Then in the middle of the conference, she walks up to the stage and there's these people there, and then she starts talking about her publishing company. She goes, "And I want to introduce our newest author," and she's I had no idea, and it was like this big thing, and of course I was like crying or whatever, and that's how it happened. And then they tasked me with writing, the rest because again it wasn't supposed to be a book. It was just like it was almost like a diary,
Hmm.
and then I worked with an editor to make some changes, and here we go.
Yeah, that's how it became. In your opinion, do you think there should be more Latinx book authors?
Absolutely. I think there should be representation
Hmm.
from, it's not even communities because there's so much uniqueness, right?
Hmm.
Even from within you, different communities, um, we have people who, we have different traditions and different cultures and different norms, right? But then also there's such a unique perspective
Yeah.
that everyone has, right? Just it's everything from, you know, your age, how you identify, your gender, your sex, your experience with education, your
Oh,
experience
yeah.
with your parent, like it's just
Yeah.
every part of you so unique. So I think there's more voices
Hmm.
that we can get, the better, obviously. And I also hope that, you know, the younger generations start, not start, but continue to embrace books because I know
Yes.
we've lost so much of that
Hmm.
with the sound bites and the social media, and our attention span is so much smaller, shorter than it used to be, and so I hope that people write and tell their story, and then there's people who are interested in learning about others and reading their stories.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think
Mm-hmm.
I've never been someone who was selective about anyone's background. I've read Anne Frank books and I've read um, so many books by so many different authors, regardless of what their background was. It was
Mm-hmm.
more like, oh, this seems interesting. So, next question, was there a mentor or professor at Berkeley College that stood out to you?
Yes. Oh my God. So there's Diane Emilo,
Hmm.
who she was my English professor.
Oh, nice.
And it was funny because eventually she went to work at the elementary school where my older kids attended. So
Hmm.
I knew her in that environment too, which was funny. But she was the first person who made me feel like I had value
Hmm.
in terms of academically, right? Intellectually, that I had something to offer, that I had potential. I hadn't felt that in a really, really long time. You grow up as an immigrant and or as immigrant poverty, a single parent household, like all those things, right? If your
Hmm.
parents, like my mom worked 3 days a week, I mean, 7 days a week, three jobs.
Right.
And then my dad was in Costa Rica. They were divorced. He was living his own life. So my mom didn't have time to worry about, I mean, she barely slept, never mind worry about my grades and things like that.
Right.
And I think because of the trauma and so many things, I was constantly looking for approval from the outside world.
Hmm.
And and then so I had no real sense of my own value, right? Which is part of the reason why I was in all these abusive relationships. And she made me feel smart. Like I had
Yeah,
something
nice.
to give,
Yeah.
and more that like I had talent, and I will never forget that because it changed my view of myself.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
And then Patty
Absolutely.
Greer, I met
Yeah.
Patty later on in my associates. So both Miss Emelo and Miss Greer are during my associates,
Hmm.
my first few years at Berkeley. And I met her later on towards the end of my degree, my classes, whatever, my program. And we both have very young kids, and we were both like struggling. Like she was just coming back from maternity leave. She had
Hmm.
twins, and I had three little young kids,
Hmm.
and we bonded
Hmm.
over the struggle of motherhood and trying to have a career, trying to go to
Hmm.
school, and I felt very seen by her because I felt like she could see how hard it was for me, and I could
Oh,
see how hard it was
absolutely.
for her, right?
Absolutely, yes. And one thing about Professor, well, I call her Patty Greer, but Professor Greer and Provost now, Provost Greer, I think she has such a wonderful talent to just be able to connect with all her students, even though we are all very much from a different background than she is in her
Mm-hmm.
upbringing, but she still has a heart to be able to connect with all of us. And also, I loved being in her class in our paralegal program and in those classes because I was in a stage in my life where I didn't really know right from wrong. And I didn't know, Linda, you can't, if someone says something to you, you can't hit them. I was like, what? That was the first, well, I grew up in Orange, New Jersey. I was like, what? What do you mean you can't hit them? That's what we do. That's what we do in Orange. That's what you do in
Yep,
Patterson, all right? You hit them, all right?
yep,
And she'd
yep.
be like, no, no, Linda, that is assault. Okay, that's called assault. I thank God for being in that
Yeah,
class because it saved me
yes.
from a lot of other things. But getting back into your book on page 90, it was so interesting. Apparently and I feel like we need to write more about our work experiences and everyone's work experience is different. You say that here on page 90, you perceived the time as a white person problem that I hadn't even realized existed. I worked really hard at hiding who I was and the parts of me that were not accepted in this in that environment. So right there, you were talking about your work environment. Can you expand a little bit on that? How difficult it was? And
Well, that was my time in my first finance job.
hmm
I was still living in Patterson, or actually, I I don't know. No, actually, I had already moved out of Patterson. I but I very much felt like an outsider,
hmm
right? I was coming off of social services. I grew up in Patterson. I was still struggling financially, like
Right.
picking between buying groceries, paying the rent, like it was still a single mom with three kids. And, people around me who were in very different situations. And again, and I also, there was very few minorities. There
Right.
were about 10 people of color
hmm
in over 110 people in the company, out of about 110 people. So, and a lot of them came from affluent backgrounds, right?
Right.
So they're talking about things like nannies and you know they're cleaning ladies, and
Yes.
meanwhile my mom was a cleaning lady, and I couldn't even imagine what having a nanny was like because in
hmm
my mind that's only you only see it on TV, right?
Right.
And so I felt like such an outsider all the time,
hmm
and so I had to create this identity that wasn't authentic to who I really am, right? Where I was denying a lot of parts of myself. Like growing up in Patterson felt shameful,
hmm
right?
Right.
So by that time, I lived in Totowa, which is, the suburbs.
Right.
And so I didn't necessarily lie about who I was, but I definitely wasn't as transparent, as authentic as I am today.
hmm So you
I
feel like you've
learned.
grown into being more comfortable being who you
Oh,
are.
absolutely. Like now I am
Yeah.
truly, thoroughly me,
hmm
right? I mean, to write this book and publish it, I had to be very firm and secure in who I am because I still work in an environment where there's very few people that look like me.
hmm
I'm in the finance industry, right?
hmm
And I'm an executive. I have been the only woman and the only person of color on my executive team as long as I've worked in this at this company, right, for 20 years. And there's been very little change. I mean, now there's been more change recently because I've added more people of color and women to the executive team, but there wasn't for a long time. So I'm very comfortable in who I am now. And like I said, I wear the fact that I grew up in Patterson like a badge of honor. I'm very comfortable with talking about my past and my experiences and all that. But there was a time where I absolutely felt like it was shameful and I hid parts of me. And even the way I dressed, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
Google me, I had very short hair, didn't wear a lot of jewelry. My makeup was like all that. I only wore dark suits because I was trying to fit
Mm-hmm.
in a, well, first in a male dominated environment,
Yes, yes,
uh,
understood.
uh, uh, where there's very few minorities or
Mm-hmm.
people who speak like me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was being that instead of who I really am. And it's not until the last maybe 5 years where I've decided to be like authentically me and show
Mm-hmm.
up as who I really am.
And it's
Um,
good for you. It really
ah,
is because we're not born actors,
mhm,
Nancy, and especially like our neighborhood, we were taught to always, well, especially our culture, sometimes we're taught to be real. And if you don't like somebody, just tell them. And, so I think also like there's two situations with that where you become a facade, right? And then and then it's harder work trying to keep up that facade. And then all of a sudden you act out of character and then people don't know who you are. Are you acting out of character or are you yourself? So I'm so grateful. I'm so glad that you've grown into feeling more confident in who you are and how to present yourself. And that takes time. That's it's a total normal experience. It was very similar to my experience as well.
yeah, and I also think that, like, for example, diversity, equity, inclusion was not a conversation back then.
Hmm.
And so that is why, company culture, DEI, those are very important parts of my work. And that's why I'm such a big advocate for it.
Hmm.
The company that I work for, we were voted 2 years in a row for the best company to work for DEI. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Because for that reason, I don't want anyone else to be
Hmm.
anything other than their authentic selves when they show up at work.
Hmm.
Not to mention the fact that we miss out on so much of their talent
Right.
because what makes diversity in the workplace so beneficial, right? It's
Hmm.
better, more profitable, better culture, more innovation. Like there's so many benefits to it. Mental health, it helps our mental health, right? Because
Hmm.
hiding parts of yourself, it really wears you down as
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
human being. But all those things are so important. And if people feel that they can be themselves, then you get all those benefits. If they can't be themselves, then there's you lose all the benefit of the cultural richness that people bring when they have different perspectives.
Absolutely. Now, going back to the book, do you believe that A, that you were one of the lucky ones, and B, do you believe you might have had some Stockholm syndrome?
You mean because from growing up in Patterson or because of the abusive relationship?
Abusive relationship, which is where like you feel like you're supposed to be abused or like you're doing something in order to have
Right.
that type of behavior or retaliation.
I think that now that I understand, and part of the healing, right, is understanding why
Hmm.
you stay in these relationships, right? And I don't think it was that. I think it was just domestic violence was familiar to me
Hmm.
because it's been in my family always, right? My father was abusive to my mom. My brother was abusive to his partners. My sister's first husband was abusive. Like that's all I'd known, and it was very normalized in my
Right.
in my family and also in my community.
Hmm.
Also growing up in Patterson,
Hmm.
there's a lot of violence. It's just
Hmm.
it was perpetuated, and so I think that it felt very normal, although I knew it was bad and
Right.
I didn't want it. No one
Hmm.
wants to feel threatened. No one wants to be afraid. No one wants to, be in an environment where they're always walking on eggshells and all that. No one wants that. So,
Hmm.
there's a misconception and people say, oh, they must want to stay there. No, there's not. It's just, you just don't know how to get out.
Hmm.
Or this is what you were taught love is, and we're all seeking love,
Hmm.
right? And so if you think that this is what love looks like, then that's where you stay until
Hmm.
you learn that that's not what love is. And I think the most important part of that is that I didn't learn to love myself or value myself. That part of my development, I missed that part of my development. And it's part of it. It's because of a lot of the trauma I talk about in the book in my early years. And so that was something that I learned as an adult, much later in life, probably in the past 5 years that I've really worked on that. Um, and do I feel like I was one of the lucky ones? I feel like I was, I've been gifted,
Hmm.
right, with resilience. And I made some really good decisions, although I made a lot of bad decisions.
Right.
And so I think some of the really good decisions that I made uh, created opportunity, and I was able to take it. And I believe that we all have a very distinct journey with a
Hmm.
purpose. And I do believe that this is my journey, and that my purpose is, to help other people. I do believe that genuinely. Um, but there was a long time where I felt guilt about being the one of the lucky ones. I felt like
Wow.
survivor's guilt.
Wow.
And yeah, but I have been able to process that as I made some good decisions,
What if
that helped me.
what I found interesting is that while you were going through all this stuff, you were still doing school, and you still kept up with school. Do you think that school was like a motivation for you? You think school saved you?
I think that we all need coping mechanisms,
Mm,
right?
hmm.
Everyone has coping mechanisms. And for example, addiction is a coping mechanism.
Right.
Alcoholism, gambling, sex,
Yeah.
um, you know, um, shopping, all these things, right?
Right.
And some coping mechanisms are socially acceptable, and some aren't. And some are very disruptive to our lives, and
Hmm.
some aren't. I think that when I was very young, a teenager, right? I talk about it in the book. I drank a lot. I engaged in a lot of risky, disruptive behavior.
Hmm.
Then I was in this very abusive relationship with this man, controlled every part of my life.
Right.
And when I was out, I felt like I got a second chance in life.
Hmm.
And so my new coping mechanisms became exercising, school, work,
Hmm.
like those were my coping mechanisms. It also, I felt like there was no, I couldn't fail because I had this one chance to get these kids out of, so they wouldn't have the same experience that I had. I think also, though, in all that, what I didn't do is work on my mental health,
Hmm.
right? I didn't have the resources, didn't have the time, single parent, all that. And so that is why it perpetuated, right? And then I had another abusive relationship because I wasn't healed yet.
Right.
Um, and I think that it took a lot of more work for me to get to a place where I am, and we're never fully healed.
Hmm.
There's always work. Being a human is hard work,
Yeah.
but definitely I'm in a place where I'm much more aware, and I've done EMDR and a lot of other therapy, and I've read tons of books about mental health. So all that has helped me, but definitely I think that just so much. But school was definitely an outlet for me.
Right. And maybe something to focus instead of focusing on everything that was going on.
Yes, it was part. I was actually diagnosed with dissociation disorder,
Okay.
and these were my escapes.
Yeah.
Now it just so happened that the choices I made of, because there are plenty of times where I wanted to drink, or I wanted to
Hmm.
do engage in some other behavior that was risky, and that,
Right.
but being a single mom, having the sense of responsibility
Yes.
didn't allow me to give
Hmm.
myself permission to let it loose.
Right.
So instead, I kept making choices that were better, in that if I'm going to escape, I'm escaping in a way that feels productive and ultimately helps me.
Wonderful. What are you grateful for?
Oh my God, I'm so great. So I wake up every day and I give gratitude, and I end
Mm-hmm.
every night with gratitude because I have so much abundance in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I One of the things I'm most grateful for is that although I've been hurt a million times,
Mm-hmm.
been hurt by my family, I've been hurt by people I trusted, been hurt by people I loved, I've been hurt, I mean, so much trauma, right? I've
Mm-hmm.
been betrayed. I am still full of love for people.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely just love people, love connecting with people. I um I have an amazing relationship in right now. I have an amazing partner. I haven't been jaded to the point where I've decided to just give up on the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't been jaded at all. I still feel that there's so much good in people. And if anything, because I've gone on this mental health journey, I can see people,
Mm-hmm.
right? I can see their hurt. I can see why they're like that. I can see that someone, if they're mistreat me in some way or do something hurtful, is about them, not about me. And
Mm-hmm.
just it's given me such a better perspective in life. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that I am aware of every morning I wake up and I'm grateful that my body shows up for me every day, that I've been able to heal from all the hurt. I give gratitude for the clarity in my mind that my mom has Alzheimer's, and seeing her, that
Wow.
she's not verbal anymore. She doesn't even know who we are.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me give so much gratitude because I'm aware, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
about people who can't get up and just do the things that I do or whatever it may be. So I am full of gratitude, but I give gratitude for moments like the one we're having right now, where I'm able to connect with you and talk about these things that are so meaningful.
We learn so much ever since I started the podcast. I've even had friends that I've known for 20, 30 years.
Mhm.
And it's amazing what we talk about because there are things that even though you were friends with your whole life, you never had an opportunity to actually have like a good heart to heart conversation. Like I said, I met Nancy once in class, and from then on, our lives took on and graduation and work and all that, and then was able to reconnect with her and then realize, oh my God, she's a book author. And if she can do it, I can do it too. Because representation
Yeah,
does matter. It's like, okay. And
absolutely.
then like there's a few chapters that I'm like, oh my God, like yeah, I could really relate to your book. And it's good to have that and to have, when you're going through dark times, you think you're the only one, but in reality there are other people going through very similar situations as the situation that you're going through. If there was one advice, the last question, if there was one advice you could give to the 20-year-olds, our students who are at Berkeley College or the young adults, what advice would you give them?
Take care of their mental health. Because one thing I have learned that, now I'm financially stable, and, I have so many of the things that I wish I had when I was growing up. And one thing I've realized, that until I took care of my mental health, I was not the best version of me for me or anyone else.
Hmm.
And you can't pour out of an empty cup.
Right.
And even school and all those things, yes, prioritize over the party, and
Hmm.
prioritize it over that, but don't prioritize it over your mental health. You can't be your best until you take care of you, and learn about, how to take care of your entire body, your
Hmm.
mind as well as your physical body, um, because then that's going to make everything else fall into place. But that's the one thing that we neglect so much because we think we have, oh, we're so young, we have so much
Right.
time, I'll do it later. And the reality, though, the quality of your life would be 1,000 times better if you prioritize yourself and your mental health.